As we explore the collections of Humboldt University, we look for different concepts of activity, time, and preservation. Starting from the geological collection, we will trace weathering processes, as well as the deposited layers of time and stories that lead us from the self-healing power of stones to the dialectic of decay and growth under the earth, and on to museological concepts of remembering and collecting. Stones are an active material, but the millions of years it needs to take shape, decay, and regenerate are beyond human scale. How can the time structure and the activity sedimented in these objects be made tangible in the exhibition space? The knowledge of geology is a highly sensual knowledge, closely connected with haptic, olfactory, and sometimes even with taste sensations. A haptic box in the Tieranatomische Theater's open display case transforms it into an exploratory research apparatus where visitors can experiment with this other or implicit knowledge of geology. Visitors are invited to experience weathering processes of the earth through touch and to experiment by simulating centuries of rainfall on stone samples. The world of stones and the soil that supports us often escapes our attention and makes itself inconspicuous and invisible through its apparent permanence and immutability. Yet without stones, there would be no life on Earth. Plate tectonics, as a living and life-shaping force and as non-human agency, opens up philosophical and political questions about humans' place in the world order, about resources and capitalist exploitation. Immerse yourself in these and other questions by picking up the 3D print of a stone weathered by wind and sand and walking through the exhibition space. Let yourself be carried away by processes and interactions that cannot otherwise be seen. How can one sense a cell? Cells are tiny creatures. They seem utterly foreign to our human scale, and yet they are the fabric of human and more than human bodies. Surgeons dream of intervening at that smallest level of the organism. But what does it mean to care and feel for a cell? We spent time with the macromolecular physicist Mohammad Fardin Gholami, who told us about his experimental project, Sensing Knife. This aims to convert the technology of the atomic force microscope into a neurosurgical instrument, a machine that can feel like the hand of a surgeon at the level of an individual cell. Through a collaborative design process, we invite the visitors to a speculative experiment. Enter our micro Tieranatomisches Theater and try our virtual sensing knife. Here you can see cells floating around the rotunda of the Tieranatomisches Theater, vibrating on its rhythm. What if we could physically feel the material rather than just looking at it? Our colleague, Fardin, is eager to develop a haptic device to increase the immersiveness of the interface. Together we are prototyping a wearable garment based on the traditional Korean clothing, hanbok. When worn, the hanbok acts as a hybrid membrane, turning the perceptive event into a full-body experience through the use of vibration motors and so-called body shakers. Even after taking the hanbok off, the wearer might still perceive more than human beings in a different light. The climate in this part of the Tieranatomische Theater was built primarily as an interior for cooling, which is why it has relatively small windows and very thick masonry on the ground. Here, in the former horse preparation room, one can well imagine how important it was to keep it cool. This investigation of the indoor climate in the current exhibition always sees itself in interaction with objects, materials, and visitors as heat-emitting and absorbing actors. It uses various testings of climatic separations. One is created here in the rotunda by a subtle circular wind, which in turn sets up an air curtain around the centre with the columns. Artificial atmospheres invite people to sense and play, and material to erode and weather, in order to critically question the conditions of the interior environment with its active and conserving microecologies. What are the similarities between these two objects? Both react and interact with climatic conditions. Olivine is a susceptible hygroscopic mineral, taking from and giving humidity to the environment if the conditions demand it. It is known for its so-called enhanced weathering capabilities. Through carbon and water from the air, it degrades into small parts, mainly on coastal lines, to be metabolized by marine living microorganisms. On the other side, this electronic controller board is designed to sense, measure and influence temperature, humidity, pressure, carbon dioxide and other volatile organic compounds in experiential, multisensorial space. So these two objects in relation show, on the one hand, nature's inner capabilities and, on the other, human logic as a sequence of reactions with the environment that distinguishes and at the same time connects them. Christian Gottfried Ehrenberg can be considered to be the founder of the science of airborne microorganisms and thus of aerobiology and geomicrobiology. In effect, he can be seen as the founder of the theory of the Earth, including its rocks and rock deposits, as a living entity. Dust, in other words airborne particles of mineral, plant, microbial, animal, anthropogenic and intergalactic sediments, potentially travel through the exhibition space, interacting with its thermal conditions. To study the atmosphere and its metabolic activities over months, we will include laboratory measurements, satellite data, natural indicators such as lichens and rock samples, and we will make them tangible through multi-sensorial media. The illusionary meshwork painting on the inside of the Tieranatomische Theater's dome with animal scenes is the historical membrane for the collective augmented space for science. This transdigital interplay of matter, energy, and space for collective imaginaries, empowered with the force derived from meta-animal sacrifice and distributed by vulnerable humans and plant garlands, is reenacted with the co-knitted environment. What is material, void, or body at one scale or view is environment for the other and at another scale. Cohabitation matters, multi-scale architectures, wearables, containers, and atmospheres are porous homeostatic maintenance layers and integral to extended metabolisms. Matter-body interactions and velocities as cultural foundations make metabolic processes both physiological and symbolic. The trace of these processes is the origin of art and science. The environment, co-knitted with textile designer Nelly Singer and architect Daniel Suarez, explores the activity of matter between construction and emergence. Scaling up textile techniques with informed material, plant-based filaments with stored elastic energy, and perceptible voids forms a responsive environment. This acts as a method to inhabit and investigate different materialities and porosities, stones, cosmic rays, and data of the exhibition space from within. Responsiveness reveals material-related behaviour and explores our solid ground, bodily and social haptics, and environmental density. A double wooden picture frame opens up an intermediate space within which pictures can be hung on white or black grids. The object is titled Device and is by the artist Sabina Hutzitkiewicz. It normally stands in the office of the art historian Claudia Blümler of the Humboldt-Universität, and it was conceived by the artist for Claudia's art historical research. The staggered grids can be moved, shifted, and exchanged. This stretching flexibility in the space in between creates an open structure for working with pictures. Images can thus become visible or invisible, next to or behind one another, overlapping and intersecting. The device is somewhere between design and art, between an everyday object of use and an object of observation. It demands a haptic approach. From a frontal view, we can see a picture frame that is similarly crafted to the doors in the Tieranatomische Theater. The back gives the same view. Running through the sides of this picture frame is a 35mm film strip. With the help of a 3D program and a CNC milling machine, this was milled into the wood. Laterally, this perspective does not open up a showcase view, but rather a media view of moving images. This relationship between analog and digital images inscribes itself in the handling of the images, which are spatially related to each other in the space of possibility. In the sensual as well as performative expansion, the images are moved into a relationship with their production and with their different handling. This also implies a spatial expansion. As an apparatus for art historical research, Device has now been moved into the exhibition space of the Tieranatomische Theater. For the exhibition, Stretching Materialities, it is the mobile location of a documentation in transition. It can be moved on rollers in the exhibition rooms to show photographic and graphic images of the exhibition in the grids. These can be from the present time, or they may document earlier stages of the exhibition, and thus enable a research-based change of perspective. In this way, Device is an object that creates a milieu in which action can be taken. In use, the different ways of dealing with images that accompany, comment on, document and archive the exhibition become operational. Thus, Device is the mobile place of an exhibition documentation in transition. This will also be the place for performances during the exhibition.
The metaphor of the elevator, which takes one to other levels and thus perspectives, has become tangible here. In our virtual glass elevator, the path leads to other levels of materiality and new perspectives on its activity. With a virtual reality headset, the rotunda becomes a new, spatial and touchable experience. Down we go into the material. Our glass elevator not only transports us into the material of the floor, it also shrinks us and allows us to see inside the material, its cavities and inner interfaces, its cavernous structures and crackling activity. The inner surfaces of the material are many times larger than their visible surfaces. I wonder what it would be like to stand here. Upwards, the elevator takes us to the theater on a vibrating platform. Here, in the past, life was explored, animals were dissected and examined by doctors. But life and activity can also be found in the material of the building itself. Even if living structures function differently than non-living ones, they are also active and shape our world every day.